Hi, everyone. Welcome to the June edition of Cat's Coffee Break. I'm Bobby Benzer, and I'm joined today by the lovely Erica Summer. We're representing the Cats team, and we're here to talk about young adult titles. We're heading into the summer season. We're taping this right after Memorial Day weekend, and we all know that young adult titles do especially well during the summer season. They circulate incredibly well, and there's a lot publishing to this space this time of year. And that probably can be attributed to the fact that young adult titles do so well for multiple audiences, right? There's a lot of crossover appeal. And in fact, we're welcoming our friend Erica Curtis, the VP of Marketing for Consumer Insights and Strategy from Penguin Random House. She's going to be joining us later in this segment to talk about a recent study and white paper that they did regarding the YA reader, the YA market, and it's extremely interesting. A lot of it can be probably instinctual from you guys who are out there in the field servicing patrons every day, and that's, there is a lot of crossover appeal and buying behavior and circulation behavior when it comes to this market, right? A lot of the readers tend to be in that 18 to 35 age bracket, in addition to the teen age group. But she really gets into the nitty-gritty of it, really enlightens and surprises, and is here to help you, the librarians, really provide the most impact for young adult material at your library. So we're very excited to have her. And we thought, Erica and I, a great segue into that portion of the segment would be to book talk a couple of our favorite recent releases or forthcoming releases in this space. And I'm going to kick things off with some highlights that are part of our First Chapters Fridays program, which is a relatively new program in the CATS department, where we work with our publisher friends to showcase authors reading the first chapters of their forthcoming novels, whether it's the middle grade or young adult space. We have highlighted many to date. You can find all of these video clips by searching Title Source 360 on the Home tab for this image. Or you can Google Baker and Taylor YouTube and choose the First Chapter Fridays playlist. Some teen authors we've already featured include Adib Khorram, Candy Fleming, Candice Ilo, and forthcoming authors include Ayanna Gray, Kellis Rowe, and Ryan LaSala, and Chaz Hayden. These two additional First Chapter Friday favorites, which I'm sure you've never heard of, are from Ruta Sepetys and Saba Tahir. Both are perfect for young adult book clubs for the teen reader and for the new adult reader. Ruta Sepetys' latest novel, I Must Betray You, is historical fiction at its best, and it's a #1 New York Times bestseller and national bestseller. This thriller is set in communist Romania and introduces us to the citizen spy network that just devastated the nation. Set in 1989, communist regimes are crumbling in Europe, but 17-year-old Christian, who loved to be a writer, is instead blackmailed by the secret police to become an informer. Given the choice of betraying everyone and everything he loves or joining the revolution hardly seems a choice. He risks everything to unmask the truth behind the regime and expose it to the world. What is happening in his country, but what is the cost of freedom? This title, and any of Sepetys' for that matter, are perfect for book club discussions. And then Saba Tahir's All My Rage was an instant bestseller as well. Bookslist's starred review calls it, quote, a knife-sharp narrative with an obliterating impact that will leave readers thinking of it long after turning the last page. The story follows the lives of a Pakistani family running a small motel in the desert of California, and two older teens, best friends Sal and Noor, who are both trying to make the best of it with the help of one another until the fight. Both are now dealing with a myriad of family and life issues alone. And when push comes to shove and its situation worsens, will they be able to reconcile it and make it through? This is a heart-wrenching novel about young love and forgiveness in a unique setting and perfect for book discussions. Now, we'd be remiss to talk about teens and young adult fiction, nonfiction, without talking about ALA's Teentober. Last year, we launched our first Teentober authors event series, where we, for the entire month of October, feature different virtual author events through Zoom, open to the all libraries and their patrons. And this year, we're doing the same with a lineup that is absolutely phenomenal. We're thrilled to have a kickoff event with Elizabeth Lim coming up in late September, followed by many, many more throughout the month of October. We'll have a live event for viewing in your library that includes Romance versus Thriller Duel featuring Olivia Abtahi and Catherine McGee, taking on Karen McManus and Jessica Goodman. So we got 2 on. You can watch our website, cats.baker-taylor.com, for updates on all our Teentober events that are happening in October. Erica is going to talk about some titles by a couple of the authors that I just mentioned.
Hi everyone. So I thought I'd highlight a few of the other great crossover appeal titles from our Teentober lineup. First up, Elizabeth Lim's The Dragon's Promise is the second in the New York Times bestselling Six Crimson Crane series. So both of those would be good titles for this program, which takes readers on a journey to the kingdom of dragons. I love the female perspective of this. Princess Shiori made a deathbed promise to return the dragon's pearl to its rightful owner, but keeping that promise is more dangerous than she could have ever imagined. She navigates the political intrigue among humans and dragons alike and fends off thieves who covet the pearl for themselves. All this while trying to keep the appearance of being a perfect princess. And the pearl itself can be malevolent, seemingly on her side one minute and betraying her the next. It will take every ounce of strength Shiori can muster to defend the life and the love she's fought so hard to win. We're really excited about that one. And then Nothing More to Tell is Karen McManus at her best. I'm sure you're familiar with her name from this best-selling author of One of Us is Lying. Comes a new page-turning mystery starring Bryn, who left St. Ambrose School 4 years ago following the shocking murder of her favorite teacher, and a case that has yet to be solved. Now that Bryn is moving home and starting her dream internship at a true crime show, how cool was that? She's determined to find out what really happened. Digging into the past is bound to shake up the present, and Bryn uncovers secrets that might change everything. I have to say this at least once every time I present. You'll have to read more to find out how it ends, but I'll leave you with this. 4 years ago, someone got away with murder. The most terrifying part is they never left. And I'll wrap up with 2 more from our Teentober lineup, both publishing in October. First, from Frederick Joseph, the author of the best-selling The Black Friend, and his wife and co-author Portia Joseph, comes Better Than We Found It. This nonfiction guide to social and political progressivism will appeal to anyone wanting to get more involved in fighting for a better world, featuring more than 24 interviews with prominent activists, authors, actors, and politicians. Topics included cover climate change, gun violence, transphobia, the widening wealth gap, and much more. Readers will walk away knowing where to start and ready to tackle some of the biggest issues of today. I'm so excited to have some nonfiction on the list too. This is great. And then finally, we're going to switch it back to fiction with the award-winning and fabulous Melinda Lowe, who returns to the Bay Area in A Scatter of Light. This coming-of-age queer story is set against the backdrop of the first major Supreme Court decisions to legalizing gay marriage, and almost 60 years after the end of Lowe's last novel, Last Night at the Telegraph Club, offering a glimpse into Lily and Kath's lives since 1955. Aria was looking forward to a summer on Martha's Vineyard with her best friends before heading off to college, but a graduation party gone wrong sends her to California to stay with her grandmother, also artist Joan West. Here she meets Steph Nichols, her grandmother's gardener, and soon she's second-guessing who she is and what she wants to be. A summer that once seemed lost becomes unforgettable for Aria, her family, and the working-class queer community Steph introduces her to. It's the kind of summer that changes a life forever. And I'll end on that note as you sail into your unforgettable summers.
The cover is just beautiful too. And thank you, Erica. I'm just so excited about all these books and the lineup we have for Teentober. We hope that you and your patrons will join us. Again, there is no barriers to watching any of these events. You can go to our website to get the Zoom links that you can share with your patrons. And we're going to have a really fun Teentober. And I think Eric and I are kind of curious, romance, horror, romance. Where do you stand, Erica? Do you have a preference?
I think I've moved on to thriller at this point. I think
that's
thrillers.
What
I meant. Yeah.
I'm still a romance girl at heart. So we're curious to know what you guys think. Email us, cats@baker-taylor.com. We would love to hear from you. We'd also love to hear how you promote merchandise, hand sell teen books, young adult books to both teens and to adult readers at your library. cats@baker-taylor.com. Now, without any further ado, we're going to welcome the lovely Erica Curtis, again, VP of Marketing, Consumer Insights and Strategy of Penguin Random House, where she is going to share their insights that they discovered when looking into who today's YA reader is and why. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Erica Curtis. I sit within the corporate area of Penguin Random House, and I oversee a team called Consumer Insights and Analytics. And I'm so happy to be here with the library community to share one of the big studies that my team worked on last year around YA readers and the YA category. So today I'm going to share with you what we learned about YA readers. We specifically were very interested in understanding the ages of YA readers. So we'll spend some significant time on that. And then we'll also talk about who the YA library audience is and just what makes that group unique and distinct from overall YA readers. So the way that we conducted this study was mainly via a survey that we fielded in May of 2021. We did a nationally representative survey, so we used an outside panel, and we spoke to teen readers of YA, adult readers of YA, and then we also spoke to non-YA readers who might have a YA reader at home so that we could get some information on kids under 13 who are reading YA. And the way that we qualified people as YA readers was they could either self-identify by saying that they read the category, or for particularly adults who may not realize that they read YA, we provided a list of very popular titles, asked them if they had read any of those titles, and if they had, that also qualified them as YA readers. And we defined the YA library audience as readers who self-reported that they borrowed one or more YA books from the library in the past year. So most of the findings that we're going to go over in this presentation come from this really robust, nationally representative study. So before we dive into the survey findings, it's always great to take a moment just to look at what's going on in the marketplace. So we'll quickly take a beat on that. So in terms of the state of the YA market, as you all know, YA had kind of been on a slow and steady decline leading up to 2020. And then 2020, there was a bit of a rebound. And then 2021, just this massive resurgence of YA readership. So YA grew 22% in 2021 over the prior year. And this is in retail units as reported in BookScan. So while we were executing the study, we were kind of in the middle of this explosive YA growth. And then we also wanted to understand just what are all those subgenres that make up YA. And as I'm sure you know, fantasy is really the juggernaut, followed by thriller, and then a lot of kind of smaller subgenre breakdowns within that list. There's a big all other bucket here, so that big blue pie piece, 36% of the category as all other. That includes things like gaming, paranormal, religious, so many, many small subgenres. And these are kind of proprietary subgenre breakdowns that we work with at Penguin Random House. So this might look different depending on who kind of leads the analysis, but you'll always see fantasy and thriller at the top of the subgenre list. So I'm going to go ahead and move over to a summary of the findings from the study. So we'll go into what we learned at a high level and then a little bit more detail behind those high level findings. So first of all, who are these YA readers? We had a lot of different hypotheses internally in terms of that breakdown between adults and teens reading YA. And this study really allowed us to definitively answer that question and find out that adults actually make up 68% of YA readership. So that's a really big chunk, I think larger than any of us expected. But it's important to know that this is really driven mainly by their size of the population, not necessarily their engagement with the category. So we'll get into that in a bit more depth. So a really broad spectrum of readers in terms of their ages are coming to YA, but the biggest fans are really teens. Those are the folks that are most engaged with the category. We'll talk about that some more. And then life stage and gender play interesting and key roles within a reader's journey with YA. We were able to learn from this study that the average age for starting to read YA tends to be around 11. And the category tends to be pretty equally split gender-wise up until about age 15. And then female YA readers start to outnumber male readers, and this really continues to split, and female readership continues to take off through folks' 20s and early 30s. What's motivating these YA readers? In terms of their subgenre interests, that really changes as folks grow older, of course. So for younger teens, they're really interested in fantasy with magical elements. The older teens are really interested in media tie-ins, and then romance starts to take over as a favorite subgenre among the 18 to 34-year-old set. Mood and emotions are really, really key to YA as a genre. So about 50% of YA readers said they have to be in the right mood to read YA. And we ask people sort of what they want to feel when they're reading YA. And for younger teens, it's really just about kind of going from feeling less bored to happy. For older YA readers, they are reading to feel young and relaxed. So it's really fulfilling kind of an escape need for them. And then nostalgia and rediscovery are really powerful draws to this genre. So about half of 18 to 34-year-olds recently rediscovered YA and are reading more YA in the past year than they had before. And for about a third of those 18 to 34-year-old YA readers, feeling nostalgic is a really strong association for them. So what are YA readers seeking and how? I think this is no surprise, but teens are especially motivated by appealing jackets and covers. So for 42% of teens, that's a top consideration when they're making their purchase or their checkout decision. And that is not just for sort of deciding, do I want to own this book or check out this book, but it's really important for how they talk about the book with friends, because sharing on social media is so important to them. And, you know, teens are always talking about their aesthetic, and they want the books that they read and the media they consume to really kind of go along with that in terms of what they share on social. There's certainly a demand for more authentic stories with and from LGBTQ+ and BIPOC voices. So that interest really starts to grow at about age 15, and 18-year-olds really just expect diverse characters and stories in the YA books that they read. For library readers 18+, the author's background is especially important to them. And values are an important facet of reading YA. So about 20% of YA readers associate YA with content that reflects their values. And so this could be their, you know, social political values, or it could even be their religious values. And goes without saying, social media is such an important driver of discovery for YA. 80% of YA readers are using it to keep up with people and share information. And that's actually from a syndicated survey source called YouGov. So what role does the library play in this category? It's an extremely important one. So it's actually the leading source of acquisition for YA books among both teens and adults, followed by purchasing new. About half of YA readers have borrowed a YA book from the library in the past year. And these YA library readers are heavier readers who are quite into new releases. So they're early book adopters. They really want to stay up to date on the latest books and read things before anybody else. So they're going to put things on hold so that they are among the first to read. And interestingly, when we look at motivations to read, something that sets the library reader apart from the general YA reader is that they like to read to learn about new subjects and ideas. And they might view YA as a genre that addresses topics in a way that adult books do not. So now we're going to go into a little bit more depth on all of the information that I just covered. So who is the YA reader today? Like I mentioned, adults 18 plus make up about 2/3 of YA readers. So the 17 and under set are about 32% of YA readers. But important to note, this important context bullet here on the slide, that adults make up 78% of the population in the US. So they are actually under indexing versus their population size in terms of their interest and participation in this category. But they are such a large group that they are making up in absolute numbers quite a large portion of this category. So when we start to break this down a little bit further by age, how does this break down? 14% of YA readers are under 13, so it's a pretty sizable chunk. Then we have 7% are 13 to 14, and 15 to 17-year-olds are 11%. So about 18% are true teens reading this category. 14% of the audience are 18 to 24, 21% of the audience are 25 to 34, and then you see that big chunk, that 32%, are 35 plus. So I know that looks really enticing, to really focus on that 35 plus age group. But I would caution against focusing too much on that age group because while they are large, they're not really the core audience. So if we look at the percentage of each age group that has read YA in the past 12 months, for the 13 to 17-year-olds, it's almost 100% of them have read YA in the past 12 months. That goes down to about 50% for the 35-year-olds and plus. And in terms of the share of books read, so if we think about the total reading mix and what percent of that total reading mix is YA, for 13 to 17-year-olds, that's about 50%. And for 35 plus year olds, it's about 17%. So that's maybe 1 or 2 books of their total reading mix that happens to be YA. So those adults can really come to a YA franchise or title that's already big and make it bigger. But the teens are really the influencers who are kind of making the books. We were really interested in understanding YA readers who were newer to the category because given the huge growth in 2021, we knew that a lot of people were coming to this category new. So what are some facets of those folks? So they are more diverse. So about 1/3 of readers who discovered YA in the past year identify with a race other than white. So that's a bit more than the general YA population. And 17% are Black, which is also 6% higher than the general YA reader. They're more casual, so they're likely to have a less intimate relationship with the genre, say that they don't read YA books regularly, and they're even more likely to say that they have to be in the right mood to read YA. So that mood piece is very important to them. Not surprisingly, given that they're new to the category, about 1/3 say that it's hard to find YA books because there's just too much choice. And in terms of what's influencing their decisions, about 37% are influenced by art, the author, and buzz. Art, author, and buzz are the biggest influencers, and 37% of these new YA readers are considering the artwork when purchasing a book, which is higher than the general YA population. And some other things that are influential to them are authors on social media, media reviews, and awards. So in terms of where folks are getting their YA books, as I mentioned, the library is a really important place for acquisition and just building that YA readership. So we're looking at acquisition sources for YA books here. Borrowed from the library is on the very left, and we're breaking that down by those age-driven segments. So about 25% to 1/3 of YA readers are getting their books from the library, and this is most prevalent among the 13 to 14-year-olds, the 15 to 17-year-olds, and then also the 35 plus. So the library usage kind of dips a little bit in the early, adulthood, and then comes back again when folks get a little bit older, so 35 plus. The second most popular way to receive YA books is by purchasing them new, as well as someone purchasing them for the person who's reading. And the majority of YA readers are interested in diverse stories. So we asked people's agreement with a few statements. About 65% overall say they expect books to reflect different experiences and diverse perspectives. And that stays pretty true across age groups. We asked people their agreement with reading books by multicultural or BIPOC authors is important to me. And that is important to a strong number of YA readers and really peaks around age 18. And reading books by LGBTQ plus authors is important to me. This is true for about 25% to 1/3 of YA readers, again, peaking around age 18. exploring the relationship to the YA genre among multicultural readers in particular was of interest to us in this study. So we made sure to include specifically enough sample of 3 multicultural groups: Hispanic YA readers, Black YA readers, and Asian YA readers, so that we could report on them in detail. That doesn't mean that they were the only multicultural readers to participate in the study, but these were 3 groups that we particularly wanted to highlight and profile. So Hispanic YA readers are 27% of YA readers, which is 9% higher than their proportion of the population. And they are sort of just as likely as the YA reader to want to read, to see different experiences and diverse perspectives reflected in books. They're more interested in reading books by multicultural or BIPOC authors, and they're more likely to read books with magical or fantasy elements, and also more likely to share on social. Black YA readers are 17% of YA readers, so that's a little bit higher than their percentage of the US population. They're quite a bit more likely to expect different experiences and diverse perspectives, quite a bit more likely to be interested in reading books by multicultural or BIPOC authors, and tend to be constant readers, and also more likely to read nonfiction. So for example, Christian YA for self-improvement and inspiration. And finally, Asian YA readers are 14% of YA readers. That's 8% higher than the population mix. They are quite a bit more likely than the general YA reader to expect books to reflect different experiences and diverse perspectives. They're interested in reading multicultural and BIPOC authors, and they are a little bit lighter readers and a little bit more likely to be engaging with romance as a subgenre within YA. So we've touched on it throughout, but to put a fine point on the library audience within YA, they're reading about 11 books a year on average, which is higher than the general YA reader. In terms of the YA books that are on their shelf, their favorite subgenres include fantasy, science fiction, mystery thriller, and historical fiction. But they're also reading a mix of other genres, so including adult genres like mystery, fantasy, humor, and science fiction. And interestingly, 40% of those library readers who are reading YA say they read it to get a teenager's perspective. So that's a little bit higher than the general YA reading population. Looking at the patrons' path to checkout in terms of some key drivers of discovery, of course, not surprising to see the library at the top of this list, which is much higher than the general YA reader. But some other things that stand out are social media, YouTube, professional book reviews, and advertisements are all a little bit higher for the YA audience, the YA library audience, than the general YA audience. In terms of what gets them to choose a particular book, recommendations from people they know are important, as are recommendations from authors they like, and media reviews and blurbs, in addition to reading the first few pages of the book, which seems to be the case for everybody. And then finally, in terms of post-reading engagement, library YA readers are just more engaged across the board. So they are doing all the things that one can do when one finishes a book, like talking about it with others, reading reviews, posting on social media, giving stars, etc. So they're just a very, very engaged reader group. And then our library sales group put together these thought starters based on the information in this study about different ways to reach library patrons who might be interested in YA. So there's a lot of great stuff here on the slide, things that you all are probably a lot more familiar with than I am. But one section that I would highlight that I think relates really well to the information that we found out is this section here on library displays. And the big message here that we took away for our retail partners, our own marketing, was just the importance of cross-promotion and cross-merchandising within this category. Since we learned that adults and teens and younger tweens are interested in YA, and there's so much cross-pollination within the category. So some of their suggestions here include, combining adult and YA titles by genre, mixing displays of authors who write both YA and adult books, and of course, leaning into TikTok pics, which span YA, and then those buzzy adult titles, and kind of merchandising those together makes a lot of sense to folks who read these categories. So that's really the main content that I have to share with you today. We are still working with this study data at Penguin Random House. We're actually continuing to explore YA covers. As a result of this study, we're particularly studying YA romance covers. So I'm always happy to come back and talk to you about that. And then the next big category that we plan to delve into is actually the middle grade category. So again, happy to chat about that with you all if there's interest in the future. But for now, thanks so much for listening and for your interest in this information.
Thank you so much, Erica Curtis and Penguin Random House, for that really enlightening and detailed and amazing study and information session. We can't wait to hear what everyone in the audience thought of it. Anything in particular resonated, or any anecdotes that complement what was the information that was given would be incredibly appreciated. So again, feel free to reach out at cats@baker-taylor.com, and we look forward to hearing from you. We're going to wrap up this session with a couple housekeeping items. Erica has some news about a sale going on that you might be interested in learning about. Erica?
Hi everyone. Well, we're currently running our spring cleaning sale on Paw Prints editions. It's titles that we have extra inventory on, that we're hoping to clear the shelves for some new things that are coming in the fall. So if you go to TS360 and visit the selection list area under children's and teen, you'll see our 80% off sale titles, and there's a separate list just for young adult as well as middle grade and a few other categories. So hopefully get your orders in soon, because as inventory sells down, we will remove titles from the list. So order as soon as possible for your best selections.
Thank you, Erica. So many of you probably know, but in case you don't, Paw Prints Editions is Baker & Taylor's guaranteed library bindings that are lifetime guaranteed. Often we take previously published materials and rebind them into a sturdy lifetime guaranteed binding, and we call them Paw Prints Editions. And as Erica just mentioned, we have an 80% off sale going on some of our best-selling titles. A lot of them are young adult. So if you're looking to use up the rest of your budget before the end of June, would be a great way to do so. And if you have any questions about where to find those lists, just let Erica and I know. Our emails are right here. Cool. We'd also be remiss without sharing the really, really exciting news you might have heard, but Cats and Baker & Taylor have launched our own publishing arm called Paw Prints Publishing, and all original content in the realm of social emotional learning and diversity. We won't get into the weeds here. None of our launch titles are young adult titles, but we did want to take the opportunity to let you know that we launched this really cool new program in case you haven't already heard. So please visit pawprintspublishing.com for more information, and let us know if you have any questions or comments about what we should be publishing to. We'd love to hear from you. And I think the last thing that we just want to say is we hope you have an amazing summer, and we hope we see you at our summer reading events that we're launching in June, beginning with an event with R.L. Stine, right, Erica? First live event will be with R.L. Stine, and we'll be welcoming Tracy Chi and Ben Philippe later on in the summer too, speaking of young adult authors. And more information about that can also be found on our website, cats.baker-taylor.com. If you're around at ALA, please visit us. We will be at booth 2733. Again, that's booth 2733. We'd love to see you. And again, thanks for everything you do for you and for your communities and your patrons. We appreciate you. Take care.
Happy summer.